if you were to line up all the decades, it's like they're all moving in this direction, and then the 80s happens, and then the 90s happens. But the 90s was the last decade.
I was reading, this is the 25th anniversary of The Matrix, right? Which came out, I believe, in 1999. And if you remember, obviously, the reason why it's set in 1999 in the movie is because they say that America peaked in 1999. It's technically 200 years later or whatever it is. I kind of think we might have peaked in 1999.
Listen, the 1990s,
I mean, 25 years later, I think it seems like even more true.
Was the cultural reward for everything horrible we'd gone through. And that's what we got. We got like Calvin Klein wearing black. We got, Kate
everybody got along. Rap music was at its apex, I would argue. Rock music was at its apex. Now, you can have some fun debates if everybody else out there wants. Like, I think you can argue 80s versus 90s, but in almost anything, and it's a great debate.
90s.
I agree with you. I think the 90s, but
80s is my favorite. I love 80s music, but everything was like, if you were to line up all the decades, it's like they're all moving in this direction, and then the 80s happens, and then the 90s happens. But the 90s was the last decade.
Was very chill.
Last decade.
Can I tell a really quick story? So I had these friends who were visual artists in the 90s, and we were all in New York, and they got a gig to make the mothership for P-Funk, and they got like thousands of dollars to make this mothership to come out on stage, but they didn't make it. They didn't do anything. Instead, they took us all out for, massive sushi dinners. And
we just had fun with it.
And we all got really messed up and did a lot of drugs and stuff. And then it was 2 nights before they had to turn in their thing and have their project. And they're all at the big warehouse. And they made it out of tinfoil PVC pipe.
Was the result good?
The result was awesome. It was a killer
The
result.
90s, of course it was.
We got to go to Super Chats, but I want to say the 90s was the last decade. And what I mean by that is that if you look at the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, they all have this cultural distinction. The 80s, the 80s, didn't they? I mean, leopard print hot pants, come on, it's nuts. And in the 90s, you had the baggy jeans with the holes in the knees and alternative music, Jenkos. The 2000s have something. There's something there. There's maybe a little bit of pop punky emo stuff.
It really seems like the internet kind of ended this.
Right.
I mean, everything you're describing is basically
It was also the 9/11. 9/11 ended a lot of
I don't think 9/11 ended.
I think it's the
internet.
internet. Because I think the early 2000s, it was less so. There was some internet. It was on the rise. But by 2010, we were an internet culture.
And now culture is
still
just
doing it. Morrissey is still out there being based. And he came out of the 80s and the 90s.
There's no unified culture anymore.
No,